Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Bob Miller. I'm the medical director for ASCO Cancer Link. We're going to be talking about a really important related issue, which is around patients and patient data ownership. And to my left, I'd like to introduce Lucia Savage, Chief Privacy and Regulatory Officer for Omada Health, and Jane Perlmutter to her left, who's a longtime cancer survivor and patient advocate. And this is going to be a panel discussion. I'm going to ask some questions and try to largely stay out of the way so my expert colleagues here can really comment. But let me just kick it off by just offering a little bit of a personal perspective. I was a practicing oncologist for 25 years, and I saw many, many challenges around data and medical information. But I think what has become increasingly clear both through observation as well as actual research is that patients' health improves when they have access to their own health data. Patient engagement improves, their ability to participate in shared decision making and access to laboratories and to open notes and so forth. And there's likely some economic benefit with a decreased duplication of testing and other interventions. But having said all that, I think one of the challenges is that I think it's fair to say we probably haven't gotten this right yet. And so I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves and talk in a little more detail kind of about some of their experiences in this space. So.
Thank you very much for having me. And I want to actually say thank you to the families and the cancer patients here for really driving this issue forward, because in listening to the prior panel, there are so many important issues for our whole healthcare system that are really being driven by the advocates. So give yourselves a pat on the back, and thank you so much for your hard work, including the Bidens who've led this. Before joining Omada, I worked 2.5 years at the Office of the National Coordinator for Health IT, so I actually know what semantic interoperability was, which came up in the past panel. But in that capacity, I was the leading driver behind ONC and OCR's effort to not only remind people that patients have a right to get their own data from the care setting, and that's a very old rule, it's been around since 2000, but how did that rule work in a digital environment with APIs and apps and patients wanting to get their data from one place to another? And included in that work, which was generally for interoperability, was a special emphasis to help patients drive their research agendas forward by enacting this right. And we built that very carefully into precision medicine from a policy perspective, and that's kind of the privacy policy bed on which the moonshot rests, and I hope that patients will keep taking advantage of that right.
So I'm Jane Perlmutter. I'm a long-term cancer survivor. Almost half of my life has been as a cancer survivor. In previous lives, I did a lot of things in academia, in R&D, and in consulting. Actually, in our last panel, listening to a lot that they talked about reminded me of my days in Bell Labs when my first job was in the Common Language Department, when we were trying to get all of the different systems to work together. So there is some learnings from all kinds of industries that have tackled these problems and overcome them. But primarily here, I'm lucky enough to be able to represent so many cancer patients who are not here to be able to represent themselves. And cancer is a very traumatic diagnosis. A lot of the advocacy that I do now, pretty much full-time, is I view as therapy for my post-traumatic stress of being diagnosed as a young person. But one thing that many, many cancer patients really want is to have some meaning from their experience, contribute to the future, so that their children and grandchildren and others don't have to suffer from cancer. And although some of them want their own data to pursue their own solutions, and that is a powerful thing, not everyone even wants it or can actually deal with it. But they virtually all want to have their experience contribute to the future for the learning. And that's the challenge that I think we owe it to them, we owe it to our field. And I think our panel is going to talk about some of the challenges with that, some of the opportunities.
And just to add to that, most surveys that are reliable in this space show that the vast majority of people, first of all, they're very altruistic. So to Jane's point, they want to advance knowledge. And secondly, they are shocked and appalled that within the healthcare infrastructure in general and the research infrastructure in particular, data is not being shared. And patients tell me all the time, or caregivers for profoundly ill people, they're so tired of carrying around big envelopes of stuff that's been printed out and hoping that the next caretaker, a next physician, a next nurse down the road can help them sort it out. So the patients are really expecting us as the professionals to get out of our own way, to break the silos and to make the data available so that other people don't have to suffer from cancer.
Let me ask an intentionally provocative question, and that's really the question of who does this really apply to? Whose problem is this? And what I mean by that is this the need to access one's own data, is this largely restricted to a group of particularly sophisticated patients who have special needs, certain diagnoses, or is this something that if the technology were more widespread that everybody would be doing? I'm just curious of what your perspectives are.
I think that the profoundly ill and their caregivers have really been driving forces, but I think this is for everyone. And my kids are grown now, but I work in health IT, and I would have liked nothing better than a universal CAMP medical form app. Push a few buttons, extract your kid's immunization record from your physician's portal or whatever connectivity you have, and send it to every single summer camp that needs a medical form, because then you don't have to fill it out 15 times. So I think it's a both and. Profoundly ill people definitely need this, and the everyday consumer, when it becomes available to them, it's going to be as mind-altering as ATMs. When was the last time you all stood in a bank to get money out for the weekend?
So I would tend to disagree. First of all, one of my advocate adages is all cancer patients are the same. They're all scared and they all want to live, but each one is unique and they have very different needs about information and other things. And there's actually some psychological research about some people really want to know everything in the world about themselves and about the research. And other people are what they call blinders. They really don't want to know. They want to empower their doctors. So that's one thing. Then the very ill really don't have the time, energy, resources to do anything but just live through their disease. There are some people that really want and need their data as they're going from place to place to try to find the best solutions. But for cancer patients, at least the ones that I know, I would say the majority of them, it's not about themselves so much as about enabling the future.
Jane makes a super important point, right? We actually have a rules system right now, without too much change, that puts it on us as healthcare system professionals to make all of this happen so that the people who are trying to get better don't have to think about it. We're not taking advantage of the system that we have to advance the learning or advance the care. So shame on us.
Some have pointed out that when you move the needle in the direction of greater data sharing, then that has implications in the other direction on privacy, on the risks of breaches and inadvertent exposures. I'm just wondering, is that really a false dichotomy? And what do patients think about that? Because certainly as a clinician, I hear both things, that yes, I want to share my data, yes, I want people to learn from this, yes, I assume that it was already being shared, but I don't want to take any chances at all that this would be revealed to someone that shouldn't get it. So how do you reconcile those points?
I have a great cartoon, in a talk I often use it. It's a patient sitting on a doctor's examining table. The doctor says, now your data is all protected by HIPAA. And the patient says, oh great, I'm going to post it on Facebook. So it's a good cartoon, so I have to tell the story. But the truth of the matter is, as I said, all patients are different. The research suggests that maybe 10 to 20% of patients are really concerned about privacy. Many people don't think privacy is a possibility in this society anymore. Some people at least feel as though there's nothing they can do about it, they don't care about it. Some people are concerned, but at least in my opinion, it's something we shouldn't get overly concerned about. We shouldn't let that get in the way. People that are very concerned can protect themselves as well as they feel they can, but people who are not concerned should have the right to really be able to share.
Just to riff on that, in fact, a patient can post their data on Facebook or a billboard. It might be foolish to do so, but we don't regulate private people and what they do with their information about them. We treat them as adults. So that's a really important thing for the healthcare system to get their heads around. We give everything else to adults to manage in their lives, why not their health information as well? The second point, I think, in what Jane says is this one, which is when we make decisions, we should figure out if those decisions are really based on a small but vocal portion of the population or the most needful part of the population, which is really okay, if 10% are really interested, that means 90% just want to get on with their health care. And we need to start making decisions in that way. And I can say this, I have responsibility, Omada Health, for our data. We don't do cancer, we do diabetes and other metabolic disease prevention programs, but we have a lot of data and the same rules apply to us that apply to all your institutions. So think really carefully about if I give this to my patient and they do what they want with it, what's really going to manifest to me? Or if I share this with another institution and that institution got the same legal responsibilities as I do, why am I so afraid of that? Why am I so afraid of something coming back to haunt me? So we've got to sort of figure out how to have this two-way trust dialogue across the institution so that the data gets out of the silos.
And who should initiate that conversation, Lucia? Should that be done at the individual level of provider and patient? Should there be some overarching regulation? Is this something that we need
There's
to...
tons of regulation. I think for research, it depends on the relationship between the patient and the physician, but I worry more about the institution to institution dialogue because that seems to be where the silos are really getting built. And I think that hopefully activities like precision medicine and the Cancer Moonshot, which are kind of built on this idea that institutions will open up their silos, otherwise the efforts won't succeed, will start punching holes in and or tearing down those silos.
So I've seen funders fund different researchers to do almost duplicative data systems. And I asked them, why aren't you instead funding them to work together? And they say, oh, you don't understand, science is competitive and everyone wants their own thing. And I understand, but these are advocates that help raise that money. And these are things, patients don't have the luxury of patience. We have to get on with it and spend a little bit more resources, as I think the Biden initiative is trying to do, to make them work together. Another favorite cartoon is data sharing. We have open data, and it's this judge in a robe, and he has this rock welder in front of him and says, just get permission from my gatekeeper here to get the data. And I think that is the reality.
Well, that's super. Well, thank you so much for these perspectives. I think this is very interesting and certainly flows nicely from Vice President Biden's initiatives. And I think the take-home message that I get from this is one size does not fit all, but I think the era of the fax machines hopefully is going away for all the right reasons, and I think we're getting there. So
Thank you for the opportunity.